Hey, what's up, guys? Ex-Morgan with My Spiritual Life. I got Jared, my husband, and Cody from Uber Mormon. Thank you guys for helping me out with this video today. I'm super excited about it. We're going to be talking about the movie Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And the themes present in the movie, primarily nihilism. Before we get into it, spoilers. Like a billion spoilers throughout the entire video. If you don't want spoilers, then get the fuck out, I guess. Sorry. And also you can find more stuff Jared and Cody are doing at the links below. All right. So, if you haven't seen the movie, let's talk about a movie summary. So, the plot of this movie centers on a Chinese American immigrant, Evelyn, who, while being audited by the IRS, discovers that she must connect with parallel universe versions of herself to prevent a powerful being from destroying the multiverse. In China, Evelyn had fallen in love with Waymond Wang, another protagonist in the movie, her husband. Against her father's objections, she elopes to the United States. The couple open a laundromat and have a daughter named Joy. Years later, the laundromat is being audited by the IRS, and Waymond, her husband, is trying to serve Evelyn divorce papers. Evelyn's demanding father Gong Gong is visiting, and Joy wants her mother to accept her non-Chinese girlfriend, Becky, who Evelyn won't be truthful about with her father, Gong Gong. So essentially, what ends up happening is that Evelyn learns that this powerful being that is trying to destroy the multiverse is actually her daughter, Joy, from another universe. Waymond, her husband from another universe, explains to Evelyn that she needs to stop Joy, who they reference as Jobu Tapaki, and in order to stop her from destroying the multiverse, Evelyn needs to learn how to connect herself through these different parallel worlds where she can connect with these different versions of herself, where she can swap skills and knowledge with these different versions of her. So the reason Jobu Tapaki, or Evelyn's daughter Joy, is trying to destroy the multiverse is that she was pushed too hard by Evelyn in her universe to connect with these other worlds and ends up being fractured. And instead of being able to experience just one world at one time, she began experiencing everything, everywhere, all at once. Hence the title of the movie. This caused her to become overwhelmed and depressed because seeing so many alternate paths and so much suffering led her into a deep nihilistic attitude, which she describes as nothing matters. Because when you can be everywhere doing everything all the time, it makes everything feel meaningless. So the main theme in this movie is about nihilism, and this, if you are aware of that, nihilism is the philosophy that essentially says what Jobu Tupaki says in the movie, which is nothing matters. It's the rejection of all religious and moral principles because life is meaningless. So ever since seeing that movie a few months ago with Jared, I've been dying to talk about it on the channel because it is such a rich topic. Nihilism is such a rich topic to explore as someone who's left a high demand religion. And the movie also just is so beautiful, so original, so creative that I'm really excited to talk about that as well. Um, leaving a high demand, blah, blah, Leaving a high demand religion can tend to drive people sometimes toward a nihilistic attitude about life. Because when religion, maybe the religion you grew up in, gave you your sense of purpose, it gave you your sense of passion and meaning. And when that religion crumbles, you might feel like it's a real possibility that maybe nothing matters. So, we're going to unpack all of our thoughts, kind of experiences around nihilism, around the movie. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. So, thanks everyone for being here. And sorry, just reading the comments. Gail, yes, get the fuck out. If you weren't here for that, that was when I was like, if you don't want spoilers, there's gonna be spoilers, so you're gonna need to get the fuck out. Oh, and I don't know who this is. Ryan Johnson, if you can give a shout out to Matt Callie, that would mean a lot. Okay.
Matt Khalil.
Shout out. All right, here we go. One thing I wanted to bring up just as an opening about my thoughts with nihilism is that I remember after we left Mormonism, and you might remember this, I was like, our marriage means nothing. I was like, marriage is bullshit. Everything is bullshit. Like, clearly our marriage doesn't mean anything because God didn't condone it. No, wait, that's not the right word. God didn't approve of it or create it or make it mystically happen somehow. So I kind of had to wrestle with this, like, does marriage mean anything? Is it just a piece of paper? Like, are we joking ourselves when we say that it means something? And I remember Jared was so optimistic and he was like, well, like, why can't we make it mean something? And I was like, because we don't have any authority to do that, Jared. We're not God. Anyway, so I kind of, it took me some time, but I kind of dug myself out of that. And I think primarily the way I dug myself out of that was just like, okay, so we can take all these things and say that they don't mean anything, and then what? And then we just live lonely, depressed lives, or we just end our life, like, because it's just moral of the story. I think what I kind of landed on was just realizing that living my life as if it matters is the most enjoyable way to live it. So uh, yeah, hit me, Cody, with your thoughts.
Oh, I was just gonna say like a radical amen. I remember that phase as well. Like, okay, so God didn't like have a hand in my life. God didn't like ordain me for a specific purpose. So now I guess I'm just nothing. So that's cool. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like, yeah, live like that for about 2 hours and see how you feel about yourself and people around you and just the world in general. And just like, is that helpful at all? Even if it were true, it would be better to live like that's not true just for the sake of where you could end up. I don't know. I love this movie. This movie made me cry the first time I saw it. It was so good.
Made
I
me cry
can't
the
wrap
second
my
time too.
It's so good. It's so good.
So you mentioned that it's better to live life as if that's not true. And I think
Yeah.
those are always just ideologies to avoid, right? So nihilism, and another big one is determinism. Determinism is basically the idea that there is no free will at all. Everything is deterministically decided, whether it be by events that happen to you in your life or the way that your brain is set up and stuff like that. And the funny thing is, a lot of these people, the high level thinkers in determinist discussions, they'll always admit, be like, well, I mean, obviously you got to live your life as if you do have some degree of control. You can't actually think that everything's deterministic. Like, well, then why are you
Right.
putting this out there then? Like, why are you trying to, like, here's how to not think?
Right. And it's not like it's a measurable thing. You can't prove how measured everything is and like how determined your life has been. It's not like gravity. It's not like, you know what I mean? It's not like
Gravity's not even proven, so yeah.
right. Well, yeah, but you can drop something and every time it will
Yes,
go.
yeah, I get
Whereas
you,
so
I get you.
you at least have like repetition. Whereas like you can only live your life one way. And so
Yeah.
you could never go back and say which is the way it was. And yeah, I don't know how smart people can have such like an unfalsifiable worldview and just be like, yeah, I'm smart.
The thing that
They're so smug.
the smugness.
The smug.
The thing that gets me with nihilism, because like I'm someone that I feel like has to wrestle with my nihilistic side a lot. I think it's my brain's way of trying to shut me down from trying things, because I'll be like, oh, like I should start doing this thing. My brain will be like, what's the fucking point? You're gonna die one day, Morgan. You're gonna be in a coffin, and then what good is that gonna do you when you're in that coffin? I'm like, shit, like, well, make today a little better. God, get off I'm gonna need you to get all the way off my back, me. Anyway, so I have to wrestle with my nihilistic side a lot, right? And in doing so, I feel like I've learned a lot about nihilism, because I think I'm weirdly inherently very nihilistic, and I kind of wrestle myself out of it. But the thing that gets me is like, when you take someone who's a nihilist, right? Stab them with a knife, and then when they say nothing matters, say then leave the knife in there, right? It's like, okay, everyone's gonna take it out. Like, there's no person that's gonna be like, nothing matters, I'm not gonna take this out. And to me, that means something. If pain matters, then something matters. It's not that
Right.
nothing matters. And so, I don't know. I imagine you could try to steelman that and say, well, like, obviously, like, our brains are reacting. We want to minimize pain or whatever, but that doesn't mean that, everything, other things matter, that morals or matter or whatever. But to me, I don't know, everything branches off from, like, if something matters to you, then you're not a nihilist. You're not truly a nihilist.
No, you're hitting that there, because you can steelman it. You can say, well, that's an involuntary reaction. Like, of course, your body's going to do anything it can to minimize pain. But then you would expand that out further, because, like, you'd say, okay, but why don't you just, eat dog shit all the time, and I don't mean literal dog shit. I mean, like, eat poorly. Why don't you just eat poorly all the time, never take care of yourself? And well, that'd be bad in the long run, because then the fatter you are, the more miserable you are, the less healthy you are, the more miserable you are, and you want to be healthy. So obviously,
so you lost me at fat shaming.
I'm an avid fat shamer. No, my most good. Because I say that because the most nihilistic I've ever been was also, it corresponded exactly with the fattest I've ever been.
Oh no.
So it's really hard when you're just wallowing in the nothing matters to give a shit about your health or your body or anything like that. And so I'm just saying that logic expands out the whole, would you take your hand away from a flame? Well, of course I would. I'm trying to minimize pain. Okay. Would you eat healthy and exercise? Well, I mean, yeah, I'll do that, because it, like, in the long run, it minimizes pain and it makes me feel good or whatever.
So that matters, right?
So that something matters to you. It's
right.
What I would say is, it's impossible to really think nothing matters.
I agree. And I think, but it's enticing. It's enticing for first of all, like, okay, you leave a high demand religion, right? And then, or a cult or whatever, and you're like, it's enticing because like, you learned that there was this arbiter of what matters, right? This person, this God, this whatever, what deity was able to say, like, this authority figure could say, this stuff matters, so these are the things you need to pay attention to. So it's really easy when you leave that to be like, oh, well, no one else has the authority to say that these things matter, so they just don't. But that's where you have that authority. You have the authority to say that something in your life matters, and that's really powerful. And you get to choose what matters to you and why. And not all of us are good at choosing what matters to us, but most of us, at least know family is important, et cetera, et cetera. But the more you can think about what's important to you, why it's important to you, and understand that, and maybe even choose that in some sense, then I think you're going to live a happier life, whether things matter or not.
Well, if you like kind of swallow wholesale the idea, which seems to be pretty prominent right now, that personal responsibility is to be avoided and eschewed at all costs. Like, having kids sucks because it's now I lose my freedom. Committed relationship sucks because I lose my freedom. That's all personal responsibility, and personal responsibility is difficult, and difficult things suck, and I want to be away from difficult things that suck, because they are difficult. That's but difficulty is purpose, and responsibility is purpose. And so as soon as you say, oh, I have no responsibility anymore, that's very freeing for about a quarter of a second. And then you're like, okay, now what do I have? And then you're like, you become a complete nihilist. And that's Joy actually mentions in the movie something I really liked. she's trying to explain to Evelyn why she should also think nothing matters. And she said, just imagine the relief that is. If nothing matters, then all of the shitty things that you do are meaningless. There's no reason to improve yourself or anything like that.
There's no reason to bear the burden of your failure.
Yeah.
Right. I that was such a powerful part in the movie. I had that on my notes too, where and at so it's toward the end, and Evelyn has she's really getting a glimpse of how enticing this nihilism is, because she's watching her husband serve her the divorce papers. She's watching the government come in and try to take all of her assets away. And she's watching this all happen, and she can hear, her daughter's voice telling her, like, see, like this, none of this has to matter. None of this has to hurt. Like, you can just let it all go, and she's enticed by it. She really is. Evelyn, you can watch her, like, you can see the relief in her eyes as she's contemplating just accepting this reality that nothing matters. And it's so beautiful because she sees this, but then she changes directions, and she decides, no, this isn't the way that I want to view things. I think that things matter, right? And she kind of has this coming to peace moment of it all, where she realizes that cherishing all these little good moments makes it worth whatever struggle or pain you have to deal with. And to me, that's so representative, because it's like, I think that we get really used to not wanting to deal with our emotions, not wanting to deal with things that bother us. So we just numb ourselves out. We get really addicted to our phones or YouTube or whatever. And then it starts to feel like nothing matters, because you're so absorbed in this outside world that you're not even living in your current world. And it's like you're somewhere else. Anyway, so I just think it's so beautiful, because it's like you can't shut off the bad without shutting off the good, right? We're not good at compartmentalizing as humans. We're not very good at it. And so you can't just numb yourself out only when things are bad. You end up numbing yourself out all the time. And so I think it's just such a beautiful moment in the movie when Evelyn kind of realizes that, and is like, these good moments, I want to be here for them, even if it means I have to let these bad moments weigh down on me. And I just thought that was so beautiful.
Yeah, that's so you're reminding me of an old I don't remember where I learned this, but essentially any form of diet that's based on like so you have circuits in your brain that are called go no go circuits, and essentially what that means is like it's easier for you to tell yourself, okay, I'm not eating bread ever again, or I am eating bread, than it is to say I'm going to eat 50% less bread for the rest of my life. Like you have these you have these go no go circuits, and so it makes it very hard to think in gray terms. And so it also makes me think that maybe that segment of Second Nephi, when Lehi is saying that like you have to have the good or you have to have the bad or you won't appreciate the good, is probably true, because like it has to be well-rounded, because human beings we're not very good at super nuanced, super gray area thinking. So we have to say like, yes, I'm going to allow these bad things to hurt me because I want the good things. I want the good things to wash over me. And the character in this movie who's amazing, and I love him, is Waymond, the husband of, I always forget, what is it, Evelyn?
Yeah.
Waymond, because he's so in it, like he's fighting with the IRS lady. He's like, no, please, just, we'll put our papers together. We'll get everything that you need. Just please don't do this to us. This means everything to me. And like, I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering it correctly, her daughter is giving her this whole speech about how nothing matters and this pain doesn't have to hurt you anymore, while she's watching it just crush her husband because he's so invested in everything. And she's like, no, but I want to be like him, because he lives in the tiny moments. He has a speech. I don't know if this is probably a good time to get to it. And I only have a portion of it pulled up, but there's this. So in one of the timelines, they didn't get married, and he's like a very successful businessman, and she's a famous actress. Wait, am I stealing something from you?
Do it. No,
okay.
it's so much to unpack with that. I'm so excited.
It's so much to unpack, and I don't have the whole quote. So if you have more of the quote, then please jump in after. But he says this: "You think because I'm kind, that means I'm naive, and maybe I am, but it's strategic and necessary. This is how I fight." And I love that so much. It's like I got chills, and it's just like, you think I'm naive, but I'm not naive. Like, I'm looking at all the same facts that you are. There are no more facts. You're making a jump this way, and I'm making a jump this way, but we're dealing with the same evidence. And I'm just saying, yes, I think that the good is worth the bad as well. And that's, I didn't expect to go here, but here we go. When Hamlet gives the to be or not to be speech, that's what he's doing again. Is he saying, like, is it worth, like, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune? Like, does the little tiny moments of good that I get, are they worth all the shit? And I mean, he dies later. Spoiler alert on Hamlet. But but he doesn't off himself, so at the end, like, he doesn't die by his own hand. So even Hamlet is saying, like, this is worth it for me. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Go ahead, Drew.
So that's actually Wayman is he's an awesome character, and he's like his optimism is this perfect contrast to Evelyn, because there's this one scene that really stuck out to me where it's showing their memories together, and it's very brief. When they own a laundromat, when they first open the laundromat, and they react very differently when they walk in. She walks in, and like he clears this blanket off, and this dust goes everywhere, and she's like, ugh, like, oh, this dusty piece of crap. And he's looking around, and he's just like, this is all ours. He's looking at this laundromat that she's disgusted with, and he's like, this is my empire, and and there's this cool, I watched a video where it pointed out two of these main contrasting symbols that recur throughout the whole movie. There's the bagel, right? And
I loved that.
And the bagel,
which makes it a Jewish film.
Yeah. for anybody who doesn't know, the bagel is Joy puts everything on the bagel, and it's nothing. It's basically this black hole of meaninglessness, and you're supposed to step into the bagel to embrace oblivion, basically. And then it's funny because it's this black circle with this white mysterious core. But there's another symbol, and it's the Google eye. And it's the opposite. It's this like white circle with a black core. It's kind of funny. And Wayman is constantly putting Google eyes on everything. And they give like life and optimism and meaning to everything. And it's sort of his way, and it's silly too. That's the weird part, is that like the bagel is menacing. It's kind of funny, but it's like menacing and mysterious. And the Google eye is silly. But it adds a lot to every scene it's in. Like there's this scene where Evelyn and Joy they find their way in a universe where life never started. The conditions weren't right. And so they're just rocks. And the entire scene is really weird and interesting because it's silent, and you read their dialogue as rocks back and forth. And part of the climax of the film is Evelyn, when she, as Cody was talking, decides, no, I want to be like him. I want to fight like him. She takes a Google eye and presses it onto her forehead. And it's like the third eye. And it's this silly, cheesy looking googly eye. But then you go back to the universe with the rocks, and one rock turns around to the other and starts moving, and it has the Google eyes on it. And that's, she's like adding meaning to this barren wasteland. She puts the ice, and then all of a sudden the rocks are alive, and they start moving and stuff like that.
I feel like it's so powerful. You know, it's just showing how humor can really cut through that depression, right? If you can just find something to laugh about, to kind of just wake yourself up, it's so beautiful. I really loved to going back to the whole kindness as that weapon thing is so awesome because as humans, we're so tribalistic in nature and we're so us versus them by nature, and it really disconnects us from a lot of people that we could otherwise love and be close with. And so I loved how, you know, she's fighting all these people that are trying to kill her daughter, right? And she changes her fighting. Instead of hurting them, the fighting becomes really silly, and it's like she's giving them these things that they really need or they really want, like a hug or a puppy or whatever. And it's just this slow motion, ridiculous, like crazy scene, but it's just so powerful. And to me, it's so beautiful because I think growing up I had such a black and white view of people. There's just good people and there's bad people, and like stay away from the bad people, and the bad people have these opinions or they do these things. And it's like, wow, like we're gonna go ahead and just throw away all of these people based off of some weird subset category that my brain decided that day was, you know, just made that person not on the good team. And it's just I don't think it's mature. I don't think it's a mature way of looking at the world. I think it's a self-protective way of looking at the world because we don't want to feel threatened by other people's opinions or ideas and whatnot. So I love the idea of kindness because to me, the key that has really helped me to move forward in my life from, you know, from leaving Mormonism and from all of the issues I had growing up with my family and everything was just being being compassionate with myself, being compassionate with other people, because then the wrongs that they do you don't take so personally because you're like, oh, this person is hurting. They're fucking hurting. And that's why they're going around hurting everyone, as opposed to looking at them like bad people or whatnot. Anyway, so I loved Wayman's whole message of like, you know, kindness. Kindness is what we need more of in the world. Yeah, so cool.
Yeah. Okay. So I had a couple of thoughts there. First of all, I just realized the nihilistic daughter's name is Joy.
Yeah.
I know.
Why didn't I think of that earlier? It just hit me while you were talking. Like, anyway, that does nothing else
Love
needs to be
it.
added to that. But okay,
Yes.
so I was thinking about this as Jared, as you were talking about like the laundromat scene where like it's all dusty. I feel like optimism is the perfect word for it, but like Wayman understands like a fundamental truth about reality, which is that the stuff that's already good, you can't make it any better. So all the stuff that is bad, that's where all of your potential is. Like that's where all the good will come from. So like and in a marriage, like the things that you guys are already on good terms about or the things that you already like about your spouse, like that's already the glue, but there's all this other stuff that's unexplored territory that you can't wait to discover, because odds are that's the stuff that 10 years from now, the stuff that you don't even know you have in common will be your favorite thing about each other, like as you discover it. It's like all of this dusty potential is really the good stuff.
That's
And so it's
cool.
like
Oh
that's where when people like fall when I don't know, you hear it all the time in like cheesy movies. It's like, I don't love you like in spite of your mistakes. I love you because of your mistakes or whatever. But it's like that's a cheesy way of saying it, but that's right, you know? And like if you go all the way back to the beginning of Genesis, like what does God create the earth out of? Well, he can't create the earth out of the stuff that's already something else. So he has to make it out of the dust. You know what I mean? So he has to grab the stuff that is nothing and he has to turn it into something. And so that's just like Wayman has this like metaphorical understanding of like, this is why I'm optimistic, because at the end of the day, I'm actually right, even though we're looking at the same facts and I can never be proven right. The other thing, so I had a question, because now that we're talking about nihilism and we're talking about meaning, like I don't know, these conversations are always the best, but like I would say that a nihilist would look at the world and say, well, there's no objective third party who's imbuing this whole experience of being with meaning. So it doesn't have meaning. And my question, and I think our question to them would be, does it matter if the meaning is an inherent characteristic of being or not? Or can you put that on top? Just like you throw a googly eye on top of a rock and now it's something else.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard question because I would say that is, I don't know. You mentioned at the beginning, Morgan, that leaving a high demand religion throws you into nihilism. I would say just leaving religion at all could throw you into nihilism.
Yeah.
Because you have been raised thinking, I'm sort of the mind that it would be really difficult to find meaning without thinking that there's like maybe some kind of third party. But I think I might be wrong about that because I know a lot of people who find a lot of meaning without thinking that there's some sort of, God, some guy out there who's rooting for him or whatever. I'll go for it.
Oh, well, if you wanted to finish your thought.
No.
I just think that it doesn't really matter whether there's a third party, whether there's God or not, right? Because if I'm going to live my life like it matters, that's not going to change whether God turns out to be real or not.
Yeah, so here's a thought on it.
Yeah.
I would say that as far as thinking about a God goes, right? I had this thought today that I'm never sure if there is a God. I'm never sure if God exists, but there are some instances where I am completely sure of what God wants. And that sounds weird, right? Like that, like if you're not sure something exists out there, then how can you know what they want? But like what God wants sounds more easy to figure out to me than is God there? And because things like, I don't know, charity and honesty and things like that, like being honest in your dealing, like that feels, even when I don't want that to be, like even when it's difficult for me to be honest, like that feels like a thing that God probably wants, even if there is no God.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So I mean, there's so much to unpack with that, but I think what I would say, not having looked into this a ton, really just my experience with myself and everything, is just like, okay, so I think we have to live life like it matters whether God is there or not. And I think that the reason that we have to do that is because the alternative is just not as good. The alternative is, and maybe that's oversimplifying it. But I think I think for me, one thing I find really beautiful, because I think I'm leaning toward, being more atheist right now, which it's not, side note, it's not that I don't want God to be real. I would like him to be real. I'd like him to not be like Jehovah's Witnesses kind of God, but beggars can't be choosers, right? But I just anyway, okay, so I find myself being more atheist, and that makes me think we're all gonna die one day, so like, why does it matter? And this doesn't mean anything. We're not being tested in this life or whatever. And the way that I've seen around that is just, okay, so I think to myself, I could die today, right? I could stop living and stop existing entirely. Like if we were to assume that there's nothing after this life, I could stop existing, but that wouldn't stop the things that I experienced from happening. And even if the world exploded right now, we all died, we all went out in one big bang. I think in my mind, no one can take away those experiences from me, even if I'm dead, because I still got to hold my child. Like that happened. No one can take that away from me. And so that's the way that I kind of, I guess, usurp my nihilistic tyrant.
I guess holding your baby for the first time isn't really much more far removed in a billion years after the heat death of the universe
Exactly.
than it is from right now.
Yeah, that I don't know. It's something that I find really helpful because like I've dealt with a lot of health problems in the last year, and the paranoid part of my brain was like, I'm gonna fucking die, and like just so everyone knows, like I'm totally fine, but my brain, didn't think so. And I had to like come to terms like, what do I do if I'm gonna die? Like, how am I gonna make peace with this? And that was something that really helped me, was just that thought of like, well, no one can take away these beautiful moments that I've had. It just can't happen. They've already happened. No one can take them away from me.
Yeah, that's there's this song. There's this band called Microwave, weirdest band name ever. And the front guy,
No.
the front man, not the weirdest one by a long shot. There are way
The
weirder
butthole
ones.
surfers is way weirder.
Yes.
Oh my god.
No, that's a real band, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Or
You
like
learn something every day.
remember like Salad Fingers, like those guys who
Yeah.
just like all of their songs were just prank calls. I don't know that. I don't even know how, like, do you have a concert for that? You like go on stage and just like, I don't know. I digress. Anyway, so there's this band called Microwave, and their front man is the whole band, they're from Atlanta, Georgia, and their front man served an LDS mission and then left the church. So like their first full-length album is so nihilistic. It's crazy. And
Oh man, I got a bunch of cringy, very recent ex-mormon songs in the back catalog.
oh no. Oh no. And they have this song called The Last, and I've always thought that this part was so beautiful, and maybe it's saying the thing. Here's another question that I'll get to later, but I'll introduce it now. I feel like maybe it's saying something different than what I understand it to be saying, but I like my interpretation better, so I go with mine.
Yeah.
Which is a question that I'll bring up later. But these are the lyrics. They say the first time you die is when your heart stops, but you die again the last time that someone speaks your name. And it's so cool and it's so deep. And so I think about like people who I love who are gone. And when I think about them, or when I tell somebody about them, I feel like just for a second they're alive again. And so
Yeah.
it's like they're not, like, death isn't the end in a weird way, even as a person who doesn't necessarily think, like, by all physical standards, I think that death probably is the end. But like, I love the idea that like when their influence hits me and I'm still struck by it, like they're still alive, kind of, even though I don't know. So yeah, that was I guess this is the question that I was trying to say earlier that maybe was hard to answer, or maybe just isn't a very good question, but it's like, is meaning intended or interpreted? That's this thing, because it's like if you walk down, so like so like let's say I walk down tomorrow morning, and today, actually it would never be me, the roles would always be reversed. So my wife walks down in the morning and looks at the kitchen, and there's like something that she asked me to put away that I didn't put away, right? And I totally forgot, and I did not mean to do this out of spite, but she sees it, and maybe it's been a rough morning, and she's like, God damn it, that guy never listens to me, he hates me. Like, she's interpreting meaning that wasn't intended. You know what I mean? And we do that all the time in our life. And so it's like, why wouldn't we be able to just look at the way that the world operates and just imagine a being that's doing this to us? You know what I mean?
I see.
And does it matter if it's intended or not? You know what I mean? Like, to what degree do intentions really make a difference? Like, if you mean not to run over somebody, but then you do, you can't be like, officer, you don't understand. It was not my intention. Yeah.
Well, I think within moral frameworks, intention matters to some degree, but I think as far as finding meaning, there's this great Tolkien quote, and Tolkien oftentimes gets compared to C.S. Lewis because they were contemporaries and they were pals, and I haven't read enough C.S. Lewis. Like, I read Mere Christianity, but I haven't read enough of his fiction to really have an opinion on him. I just
Right.
remember watching Narnia when I was a kid and thinking, this is a little on the nose. Like, someone betrays the king, and but then there's a prophecy where the king will rise after 3 days. And I mean, hell, like, one of the main guys' name is Peter. Like, it's pretty on the nose.
Right.
So he's allegorical completely. And then Tolkien famously hated allegory. And he has this great quote, because people always tried to get him to say, oh, the ring was I don't know, depression, or the ring was addiction, or it was this or this. And he's like, no, it's like, so he says, I cordially dislike allegory in all its manifestations, and always have done so since I grew old and wary enough to detect its presence. I much prefer history, true or feigned, with its varied applicability to the thought and experience of readers. So he's saying applicability over allegory. And that's sort of why the Lord of the Rings is one of the best stories ever told. Like, and that's, you can find so many different articles, people writing this thing like Lord of the Rings is an allegory for this or this or this or this, like for anything. And that's kind of the beauty of it. And that's sort of what he intended. Is, no, it's not allegory, but it's very applicable to that thing that you're saying. So yeah, I guess meaning is mostly perceived rather than.
Well, and again, it just kind of comes back to it. I think it's the same argument that I would use against a nihilist in general, is just like, I don't know that it matters. Like, because you got to live your life like it matters.
Right.
And you can't know if it matters objectively or just subjectively. But what you can do is just try to make peace with what matters to you and why it matters to you, and, fulfill in that sense. Did you have any more thoughts on that, either of you, before I change?
No.
This is
me.
cool. This is such a rich topic. Okay, so one thought I had is, okay, so I think that so I've watched some videos about antinatalism, which kind of intersects with all this, and it's the idea that you shouldn't bring more kids into the world. You shouldn't have kids because they're just going to suffer, right? And it's it's along the lines of nihilism, is like, well, I guess, I mean, there's crossover. Okay, so because nihilists say
is less nihilist and more just anti-human.
it's more like, okay, no, I wouldn't say. Well, I would say it's very cynical, right? It's very cynical, right? Because it's essentially saying that that the suffering in life outweighs the good or whatnot. And to me, I've thought a lot about that, and I've thought a lot about it in conjunction with this movie, because that's one thing that really weighs on Joy a lot, is that she's like, what's the point? Like, you're gonna have this good moment and then something bad's gonna happen. Like, you're always like, you're always spinning this circle where more bad things, more suffering is coming your way. So, like, why bother? And to me, I just think that it I it would be hard pressed for me to find an example of a life where the suffering outweighed the good that came of it. And I'm sure that happens, right? Like, if someone is born like into, being a tortured whatever, they're just tortured their whole life like that. Yeah, maybe we could make a case that life is not worth living, right? But the thing that kind of tips the balance with this too is, it's not like we sit here in life and we hope that there's like 51% good and like 49% bad, or else it's just a fucking waste, right? It's not like that, because I was pregnant for 9 months. It was 9 months of suffering. And then my baby was born, right? And here's the thing, if he had died the day after he was born, those 9 months of suffering would have been worth it, just for that one day of holding him. And not everyone may agree with me with that, but I feel really strongly about it. And so the interesting thing to me is that some people will say, don't bring a life into this world because, yeah, these things don't matter and they're just going to suffer. And to me, I'm like, I think that as humans, it's not this 50% of like we're hoping that life is more good than it is bad. It's that the good is worth the suffering. That's what's so beautiful about life, is that that moment of holding your kid, it's worth all the bullshit that got you to that point. And so it kind of tips the balance. And that's, I think, what the movie so effectively portrays, because at the end there, Joy says to her mom, it's like, because her mom kind of really pulls her out of the nihilism and is like, no, like, I want you here with me. I want to be with you, even with all of this. Like, it's worth it to me to be here with you, even if I'm getting divorced and the bank is taking away all my assets and everything. And she's like, how can you say that? You know, Joy is like, how can you say that? Because there's only a few moments that really, you know, make sense and feel good, you know, amidst all this suffering. And her mom responds and was like, well, then I'm going to cherish the hell out of those moments, essentially. And I just love it so much.
Yeah, it makes me think of I think that the mom, I keep forgetting her name for some reason. I'm terrible.
Evelyn.
She just, I love the example of just meeting her daughter where she is and not trying to like stand outside of the hole and be like, grab the rope. But she gets into the hole with her and she's like, let's climb out of this together. And I think it's such a good example. It's so powerful. It's like, it's that old cheesy thing that we've all heard a million times where Jesus, it's like, why was there only one set of footprints on the beach? And it's like, you know, it's that, but it's just dramatized and has better special effects. But, like, she does that, you know, she meets her, she really sees through her daughter's eyes and really stands in her shoes. And then that's what's able to make her daughter kind of see her point of view as well. It's kind of like when you're in a conversation with somebody and you can't seem to see eye to eye, when they know that you are actually willing to like change your mind and you're willing to hear them out and you're like, hey, if you say something that convinces me, then I'm on your team now. Like, I don't even really see this as a thing with teams. This is just two people talking. As soon as you start to like model that behavior for them, it's easier for them to do it back to you. And I mean, her mom rescues her daughter from nihilism. Like, it's no small thing in this movie. So I think it's such a, I didn't catch it the first time I watched it, but I realized, like, I don't know, I just thought that was beautiful. And it's especially crazy because by that point in the movie, like, her mom has literally been every version of herself. You know what I mean? And so it's like, it's literally easier to integrate every version of yourself across a whole span of multiverses than it is to like see the world from somebody else's perspective, which is crazy. But I think that, I don't know, I think it's beautiful.
I think that is beautiful. And to build off of that, that there is that cool moment of like, okay, so Evelyn is, you know, telling her daughter that like she chooses to be here with her, and Evelyn's like, but you could be in any of these other places, like where you're famous and you're rich and you have all these things. And she's like, no, but I would want to be here with you. That would matter more to me than being rich. And it's this really cool growth that Evelyn has as a character, because the first time she jumps universes and she sees the universe where she's like this famous martial arts karate gal, whatever, and she's rich and she's, you know, got all this fame, and paparazzi's following her everywhere, and she is enthralled. She is enthralled in that world, and it's like it's hard for her to focus because she's so in love with this version of herself. And she immediately, her reaction is to resent Waymond, her husband, and be like, he held me back. Look where I would have been if it weren't for him. That
because
jerk.
in that reality, she had left him.
instead of getting married to him. Yes, thank you for clarifying. And so she's like, it's his fault that, you know, he held me back. And so interestingly enough, in that same world, in that same universe, she later has a conversation with Waymond in that world, and she notices that so they had their separate lives, they lived their separate lives instead of getting married in this universe. And when she meets up with him, he's also famous and rich and single like she is. And she's like, oh shit, like I guess it wasn't like him holding me back, like I was holding him back. Just kind of has this mind fuck, right? And then fast forward to the last conversation they have, where then suddenly he is talking to her, and she's like, and she's telling him like, listen, I've seen the world where we ended up together, and it is not good. It is not a good life. Like we did nothing but laundry and taxes, and it was just you know, it was nothing compared to all this fame. And he responds to that just so beautifully and basically says, I would have loved that life. I would have wanted, I mean, obviously he did want it because he was the one that, you know, proposed to her. I would have loved doing laundry and taxes with you, is what he says to her. And it's so beautiful and powerful. And again, it just cuts through all of this intensity around fame and our desire for it and our longing for it and our thinking that like that matters more, and it doesn't matter more than family. And that's what's so beautiful at the end when she's connecting with Joy, and she's like, no, I've lived all these other lives. This is what really matters. That's so fucking beautiful.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's this theme throughout the whole thing of like choice paralysis, because Evelyn is told early on that she is the one that these universe jumpers are looking for. And she's like, how? I'm bad at everything. And they're like, yeah, that's why. Like it's because you can't commit to anything. Like you have all these goals that you've failed at. And so you are the Evelyn with the most possibility, basically, because she lives in a state of constant potential, but that's it. She doesn't ever rise above the
Yep.
potential. And so she's always, and she immediately does look at that better version of her life and feel disdainful. And that's like the first, she has a hard time realizing that the entire multiverse is going to be destroyed. All she can think about is herself and how she could have been a movie star, right?
Yeah.
And this was a big deal to me because there's a bunch of people very important to me who are very much stuck in this constant thought of what could have been. And that's what happens to Evelyn when she dwells too much on these alternate realities, is what could have been, all of these possibilities. You can see them so clearly. And the thing is, she only ever looks, because there's some realities that are up, basically, that are above her in status, and she only ever looks, well, and then there's some that are below her, like some that are worse than her, right? And she only ever looks up to envy, and she only ever looks down
To scoff.
yeah, to sneer, basically. And the only reason you should ever look up or down in these possibilities is to learn, right? And my favorite part is these almost none of the jokes. I can't think of a single joke that doesn't emotionally pay off by the end of the movie. And one of those jokes is the universe where humans evolved to have hot dog fingers. Like they just have these giant, worthless, floppy fingers, and they can't do anything. And it's this gag that you just scoff at the whole time. And Evelyn actually mentions that when they're explaining to her, we chose you because you're the worst one. And she says, no, I can't be the worst one. What about the hot dog finger one? Right? And I was like, that's a funny joke. But it completely pays off in the end, because while she was looking up and being like, oh, I don't have any of that, she was looking down and be like, I'm better than that, rather than learning from the successes of up and learning from the limitations of down. And then she had to do both of those things and realized that maybe up had some mistakes and maybe down had some some creative ways to overcome their limitations. And that was like near the end, she's channeling all these different things to try to fight all these different guys. And she's got both of her arms pinned down and she can't get up. She's about to lose the fight. And then she thinks of the hot dog fingers universe. And up until this point, the hot dog fingers have just been a joke. But the hot dog Evelyn is sad about something and she's comforting her. I think they're married in this, her and the IRS agent in this reality, and they're comforting each other. And then she starts playing piano with her feet. And I was like, oh my God. And so then arms pinned down to the thing, Evelyn channels hot dog Evelyn and has unreasonable dexterity in her feet and is able to fight off these guys that are holding her down. And that's one of the coolest things, is like a human hand is this massive blessing. It's one of those amazing things to exist in the whole universe that we know of. And it's something we should probably just be in perpetual awe of, right? But we're not, because we can't. And Evelyn, like, she's just thinking of all the things higher Evelyn has that she doesn't have. But hot dog Evelyn isn't looking up at our Evelyn and thinking of all the things. Oh man, if only I had fingers. No, she's like, well, I got hot dog fingers. Guess I'm going to learn to play piano with my fucking feet. So look down and learn. Don't sneer.
Right. That's perfect. I was thinking about it's like nihilists will throw their hands up in the air. I'm using nihilist as a pejorative, but it's not. It's just a place that somebody is, you know, like I've been there, so I get it. But like you say, oh man, well, life was supposed to give me lemons so I could make this lemonade, but all they gave me was dirty water. And it's like, well, I guess we're filtering water now. Like,
Yeah.
I guess we'll do something. I guess we'll take whatever we have and make it better, you know? I was thinking about I don't know if I'm reaching too much here. So if you guys think that I am, let me know. But like in the Sermon on the Mount, like Jesus says, he doesn't say like consider the billionaires who have everything better than you. He's like consider those little fucking flowers, you know, and you might want to be jealous of those, but you don't have to be jealous of those. And the whole crowd is probably like, why would we be jealous of lilies? Like, because they don't have to dress themselves, because like they're taken care of. You know what I mean? But it's just like, it's just a small little detail. Like it's just a small little plant. Lilies aren't like super complicated. They're not like, I don't know, the coolest plant bar none is the Venus flytrap, obviously, because it eats insects. But like he's just saying, hey, consider this simple flower. And yeah, maybe you want to be jealous of it, but like you don't have to be jealous of it just because it has something that you don't. Like you have that too. You have something up there who knows that you need these things. And you know, your Father in heaven is going to protect you and take care of you just like he takes care of the lilies. I don't know. It's just like when you're looking up and you're jealous, or you're looking down and you're scoffing, like it's all just different. It's not something to really be jealous of. I don't know. I really liked that. I thought that was a good point, Jared. I forgot about I forgot about that part.
I love it. So it's also funny, if you want to look up and be jealous, realize like who's looked up to you, jealous, like in jealousy. Because one of my friends pointed that out. The whole, it was in the Bible. Jesus said like it's easier for the camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. And that's a thing that a lot of these people will kind of like to throw in the face of any Christians who have any amount of money. They'll be like, yeah, they don't like rich people. Why would you like rich people? Jesus doesn't like rich people. And because one of my friends,
Right.
he read that the other day, and he's like, you know what? It hit me reading that. I'm more wealthy than any of the people Jesus was talking to. like the rich men in his day, like would kill to live like I live. And so I am the rich man. I'm part of the top 1% of the top 1% that's ever lived.
Right. Yeah, that's just, and it's, you can always make things. I sometimes wonder, like, what responsibility do I have to all the people who are supposed to live after me, whether I'm related to them or not? And it's like, if I could make things 1% better. I was doing the math on this once. I'm going to pull up the number. I got really obsessed with making my life 1% better every day.
Yes.
I
Yes.
thought I could do that. Did I tell you about this?
Yeah, you've talked about it in a video
Oh,
briefly.
dang it. Dang it. I was
No,
hoping
no,
for an original something, but
no, no, no. This is good. It's very good.
I was doing the math and I was like, okay, if I made my life 1% better every day for a year, assuming I'm operating at, like, I don't know, 100% when I know I'm not, but let's just say I'm at 100% already, but can I make it better? Or I'm at 75% better or whatever. So 1% today is 1% of 100, right? But 1% tomorrow is 1% of 101. And so, you're compounding your interest.
Mhm.
And by the end of 1 year, like, you're not 365% better than you were the year before. You're 3,678.3% better. Like, that's crazy. Like, and that's 1 year. You know what I mean? And so it's
Mhm.
like, if everybody was like, I'm going to try to be 0.5% better today than I am
It would
tomorrow for the
compound.
rest of my life. Like, I don't know. How can that not be, like, the most meaningful way you could possibly try to live?
I love that. I think for me too, like to think like none of us know how much time we have. We could die at any moment. Most of us, you know, there's good doctors out there and medical shit is better than it's ever been, but you just never know. You could die in a car accident, you could have a heart attack, you just don't know. And I love thinking about that compound interest for that reason because it's not just like making my life 1% better, right? Because when I make my life 1% better, sometimes it makes my kids' lives 10% better. Like if I improve something in my life, like it can actually really compound for the people that I'm affecting. And that's one thing that really motivates me and keeps me going. Because I struggle with, the feeling the a lot of the confusing feelings that come with, being someone who's somewhat atheist after being religious for so long. And I find it beautiful thinking about how like everything good I've done in my life has positively affected the world around me and that will carry on. Like if I were to die today, it would still carry on. I wouldn't really die and that good would be spread from the people that I spread it to off into their friends and their family and so on and so on. And so it's like, I don't know, we all start to mean a whole lot more than we realize when we zoom out like that, you know? I think that there's power in that and I find it very motivational, but also like I think it just gives me a lot of peace because I just don't know that I can rely on an afterlife to comfort me that, I'm going to live on or whatever. Oh, so, Evelyn, there was one part in the movie I really wanted to bring up because I know we're gonna run out of time soon. With her dad. Excuse me. So there's this whole running situation with her dad. So Evelyn's dad comes to visit, and he is just very critical, very strict, very judgmental. And interestingly enough, Joy at the time is trying to get her mom to accept her new girlfriend.
Her dad.
Her
Oh, you're talking about Joy.
Well,
Yeah,
Joy
sorry.
is trying to get Evelyn to accept her new girlfriend, and Evelyn's kind of like, um, really doesn't want to deal with it, with her dad being there because of how judgmental her dad is when, Joy's grandpa. Anyway, so she introduces Joy's girlfriend Becky to her father Gong Gong, saying this is just Joy's friend. They're just good friends, and Joy is really hurt over that because she's like, you're not being honest and standing up for me, and like, you're ashamed of me kind of thing. And it's really interesting because there's this cool moment that Evelyn has, toward the end of the movie, as she's kind of gaining this awareness from all these different lives she's lived, and she has this moment where she finally really disconnects from that need to please her father anymore. And so it cuts back into her at the laundromat with her daughter and her dad. And it's kind of like they relive that experience with this new shout out to Blake film. Good vibes. Yes. It's funny because he was just calling me and I'm like, I'm on a live. So welcome. Anyway, okay, so Evelyn has this moment where she finally confronts her dad again with the whole Becky girlfriend thing, and is like, stands before her dad really confidently, grabs Becky in one arm, grabs Joy in the other arm, and says, Dad, this is Becky. It's Joy's girlfriend. She says it to him in Chinese, and just so confidently. She says it so confidently, and I love it because it just shows how she grew so incredibly, so quickly from this, like, trying to please her dad, trying to get her dad's approval, trying to lie to her dad so that she can maintain his approval, and to over to this, here it is, Dad, this is what it is. And it's so beautiful. We all need that. So that message really spoke to me because, as a kid, I always wanted my parents' approval, and I felt like I wasn't getting it, and it really messed with my head, and it left me as an adult still trying to get their approval and striving for that, and just realizing, like, wait a second, no, the parameters change when you become an adult, and you have to decide what actually makes you a good person and why. And the minute you can do that, you can disconnect from what everyone else wants you to be, because it's not always rooted in reality. It's not always rooted in a good thing. Like her dad being, having issues with people being gay, that's not something that seemed like it meant a whole lot to her outside of trying to please him. So you don't want your morals to fall prey to other people's opinions, because sometimes they're bad opinions, but it's hard to break out of that. So I think, asking yourself what really matters, what is really right and wrong, can really help you navigate letting go of trying to please everybody. So I love that message in the movie.
I also love the fact that somebody pointed out that Joy's girlfriend, she's not in the movie very much, but the few parts you do see of her, she's just like, she's kind of unabashedly sweet and cheery and optimistic in a situation where she ought to be nervous out of her mind, going to announce to this staunch traditional Chinese man that
right
I turned your daughter gay or whatever. But somebody pointed out to me when I was talking about this, like, well, of course she's like that. That's like, there's a part of Joy, even the Jobu Topaki version of Joy, that when it seems like Evelyn is going to accept nihilism, she sighs. She clearly hasn't accepted nihilism entirely. And she says, cool. I was hoping you would be the one to convince me that I was wrong, basically.
Yes.
But so she hasn't accepted that fully. And the thing that, as Cody pointed out, kind of saves them all was Wayman. And it's interesting that Joy, when she's choosing a girlfriend, chooses somebody a lot like her dad, who's very cheery and optimistic, maybe even naive.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah.
I had not thought of that version of it.
It makes me think that we all probably have a little bit of Joy and a little bit of Jobu Topaki in all of us.
Yeah.
Yes.
I realized this, Morgan, while you were talking. I feel like, in a sense, Evelyn is realizing, like, as her character develops, she's coming around to this truth that she owes her posterity. She has more responsibility to her posterity than she does to her predecessors.
Yes.
Which is another truism that we've kind of been talking about tonight. You know what I mean?
So
Where it's
cool. That's so cool.
You like old traditions, they don't have to stay around. They're not good by virtue of being traditions, although they should be treated with reverence because a lot of them are still around because they should be around. But you do, at the end of the day, there's a point in your life where you're more worried about what you owe to your children and what you can pass on to them than you are about what you owe to your parents. And I think it's brilliant. Like her peak, like the climax of her character development is kind of realizing that as well.
I love the way you framed that up, Cody. That's so cool because it is so beautiful to think of it through that lens of like, this is how you mature, right? Is you kind of kill your parents and you know, pave a new path, like in the sense that, yeah, you don't throw away everything that they did, but you throw away some things because they didn't do everything perfectly. So you got to throw some of that away. And that's really, really hard to do. So yeah, I love that. That's really cool.
I almost think the most profound response to that stuff, to the like the faux deep nihilistic stuff, is to just be like, oh, fuck off. You know, like, because that one of my favorite scenes in anything was, so the Fargo series, right? The movie's great, but the series, the TV series, like my favorite series ever, especially season 2. It's got this theme of absurdism, right? They keep talking about Camus' book on absurdism, about the myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus is this figure that is rolling a boulder as far as he can up a hill, and then every night he goes to sleep and it rolls back to the bottom of the hill and he starts rolling it up again. And it's just, that's absurd. Why would anyone do that? It's meaningless. You can never get the boulder anywhere. It's basically
It's
2 steps forward, 2 steps back, and now you're tired.
Yeah.
And there's all of these characters struggling with this whole absurdism stuff. But one of my favorite characters in season 2 of Fargo is this mom she's like facing her husband getting into these crazy dangerous situations as a police chief, trying to raise a daughter, and she's going through cancer treatment, you know, and her life is hard. And after passing out from, you know, complications from her chemotherapy, she wakes up in bed and this this teenage girl is there next to her, and she's the one that's been talking about the myth of Sisyphus the whole time, and she's like, Camus says everything's absurd. I don't know what you think about that. And he says everything's meaningless. And the mom just kind of looks at her and is like, well, I don't know who this Camus guy is, but I'm guessing he didn't have a 6-year-old daughter to raise. And basically just like, fuck off. I don't have time for your stupid book.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's just word salad. It's just, well, fuck you, you're wrong. Sorry.
Well, it's like, okay,
I
nothing
can tell you've
nothing
thought
matters.
a lot about
Now
this.
what? Now
Yeah.
what do we do? Okay, let's just accept nothing matters. Okay, where do we go from here now?
We just
Yeah.
keep accepting it.
I guess we all like end our lives because like why? So before we sign off, you gotta recap the what's the guy with the astrology thing?
Oh, you talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yeah.
Oh no.
God. We were talking.
We were
Do we
chatting
have
about
to
this.
talk about Neil?
Do we have to? Yes.
We're
It's
talking
my
to-
channel, bitches.
We are your slaves.
Just kidding.
We were talking in our little group chat about how cringy Neil deGrasse Tyson is the other day, and so the thing is, he's probably really smart. He's probably really good at physics and that shit. But
Yeah.
he needs to stop trying to pretend he's any sort of philosopher, and people need to stop thinking that they should come to him for advice, because he's like the fedora wearing atheist who thought he was clever for putting all of the Bibles in the fiction section at Barnes & Noble would cringe at Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? And if you go back through he's got several tweets. Here's 4 of them from December 31st.
This is so good.
In 2013, 15, 17, and 18. January 1st, a day of no astronomical significance, except in 2014. It's It gets the new moon. It's at pedigree. Its closest approach to Earth. 2015. To all those who reckon time on the Gregorian calendar, Happy New Year. FYI, just so you know, actually, January 1st is astronomically insignificant. To all on the Gregorian calendar, Happy New Year. A day that's not astronomically significant in any way at all whatsoever. Anyway, he does that a bunch, basically. And there's this awesome Jonathan Pajau thing where he goes over some of these Neil deGrasse Tyson tweets, and he's like, basically all the guy does is he thinks he's really clever for doing it. He just takes something, strips it to its elements, and then declares it meaningless, right? Because first off, who did he really think this was a clever observation? Or is there like a large subset of people that
he thought that
just
4 times, Jared?
Yeah.
He did.
He thought he was making this observation that people are going to scratch their heads. I never really thought of it. I thought God demanded that the first day of the year be. And by the way, it's not that arbitrary because it signifies the Earth going around the sun an entire thing, which is something you ought to be familiar with, Neil, as a physicist, but whatever. And anyway, Jonathan Pajau pointed out, like, one of the examples he used of reducing something to its elements and declaring it meaningless is just shaking hands, like, oh, what are we doing? We're just like, we're touching our hands together, and now that means hello. Like, ew, why are we even, what the hell? I was like, oh, that's so clever of you, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I commented in our chat, and I was like, imagine a guy who tells everyone that they're celebrating is meaningless because the stars don't align for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a guy builds like the first Ferrari, and then Neil deGrasse Tyson is upset about where he chooses to first drive it from. He's like, wow, really? You chose from this parking lot right here? That's where you chose to begin? It's like, well, it had to start somewhere. And also, like, all the things that they did to get it here, like, I scratch my head 4 times a day at how archaic people, before like most technology had been discovered, invented, whatever, how did they figure out that the Earth is 365 days? Like, there are pyramids that I've been to in Mexico that, like, when the light starts to come around this wall onto this side, that's how you know that like the summer solstice has happened. Like, crazy shit. Like, these are massive.
Yeah, I watched this whole thing on the Vikings figuring out how to navigate on the ocean and crossing. That's insane.
It is.
Yeah. It's like, okay, so they called it January 1st. Like, sure, I guess that's arbitrary. But like, 365
but
days,
it would have been
pull
arbitrary.
that out of your ass, Neil.
Yes,
pull it
that's
out of your
true.
ass. You go back in time and you figure that fucking shit out.
With the pyramid.
I feel like Neil deGrasse Tyson's the kind of guy that'll look at the Vikings crossing the ocean and be like, why didn't they just pull out a fucking compass and check the weather to make sure there wasn't any storms?
Well, and here's the alternative is, okay, yes, January 1st is arbitrary. So what's the alternative? We just don't measure time?
Well, you
like,
wait.
We
just pick it.
You wait for something non-arbitrary to be delivered to you by God. Neil deGrasse Tyson is the world's biggest theist. He's like, it's arbitrary. He's like, we had to pick something, right? We had to have a measurement of this.
Let's see. Before the crow's nest said, dude needs to eat a psilocybin. I totally agree.
That's Chris. He's been on.
Chris, what's up?
He's been on a couple
there's a link below to Jared. Jared does a lot of videos with Chris.
This is a different Chris.
Oh, different Chris. My bad.
I have done videos with this Chris.
The different Chris. My bad. Let's
Christopher.
See.
Or Topher, as he likes to be
We were
called.
actually 10 months for a long time, weren't we?
This is true.
And some ancients calculated that's still pretty fucking
that's
close.
That's way closer than I would have been.
Insanely close. Like, how the hell did they? Yeah, I don't know. It just, the more I learn, the more I read, the more I'm like, I am so ungrateful for all the backs, for all these giants' backs that I'm standing. I have just been so ungrateful because I've just taken so many things for granted. and putting it into this perspective of realizing how hard people worked for this information that you were literally born with is
Right.
quite it is quite alarming. You know, it really wakes you up.
It reminds me. Do either of you listen to Nate Bargatze?
I don't think
He's
so.
like a stand-up from the South. He has this amazing joke. It's years old at this point. But he says, "I'm so dumb that if I were to go back in time 100 years or even 50 years, I don't think I would make a difference. Like I would see somebody on the phone, and I'd be like, oh, you know, in the future, that will be like a way smaller thing in your hand with like a GPS and all this stuff, and be like, no way, that's incredible. Like, how does it work? And he's like, oh fuck, I shouldn't have told you that. I think it has something to do with things floating around in the sky. And they're like, how did they get there? He's like, I need to stop talking right now. Like,
Dude, I love that.
Just a beautiful, like, he's such a nice guy. He's a Christian, and I saw him on Joe Rogan's podcast once, and he was just like, yeah, dude, I don't know. I think that it helps to think that there's a God, and I don't care if I'm wrong. Like, I'm happy. Like, just let me be happy. I don't care what other people believe. I love Nate Bargatze. He's the driest comedian in America. He's so funny. But I love that joke because it's just like he's just so okay with it. He's like, yeah, like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and I don't know, and I'm just appreciative that I get all this stuff. It's just such a good outlook.
Yeah, that was funny to me that like I contrasted that famous Sir Isaac Newton quote where he says, if I could see further, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants. And I'm like, imagine that level of humility from fucking Isaac Newton.
Right?
Like, I guess he probably didn't realize that he's fucking Isaac Newton back then.
Right.
Like,
Still.
he'd be a household name for thousands of years, probably.
He's not just humble the shit out of you.
Yeah, but he's like, I appreciate all of the people that got me to where I am. And Neil deGrasse Tyson's like, oh, arbitrary.
Right. The father of Fig Newtons is so humble.
Well, and I think that's what's so beautiful about, you know, humanity in general is that we've all built off the backs of each other and gotten to way better places. And I feel like that's just what's going to keep happening overall. Like, yeah, there's suffering and that sucks. But how cool is it that there's all these people that are trying to make it better and they're succeeding the shit out of it. Like I can sit in my car no matter what the temperature is outside at 70 degrees.
I think about that
driving
all the time.
80 miles an hour, and all I have to do is put gas in it. That's all I have to do.
I think about that on the way to work because I have to drive an hour to get to work across like a freezing desert. And every now and then I think about it, I'm like, oh my God, this used to like kill people to make this journey. And now I'm sitting in my temperature controlled vehicle making this drive in an hour during inhospitable hours of the night, facing no wildlife, eating chips and drinking coffee while somebody reads a book to me at the speed that I choose. Holy shit.
That's all arbitrary, Jared.
It's all arbitrary. Oh, well, if it's arbitrary, I guess we'll end the video.
So anyway, so just shut the fuck up because that's just arbitrary.
Get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful. No, it has made me just so much more grateful, you know, and have so much more respect for the people that came before me. And also, like, I don't know, more like desire to want to be one of those people, you know. And like I think that there's always this like, oh well, I can't be one of those people or whatever, but again, making a 1% difference in someone's life can catastrophically change things for them over a lifetime.
And probably the best way to say thank you for the pair of shoulders that you stood on is to be a pair of shoulders for the next people to stand on.
Oh hell yeah. Oh man, that's so fucking beautiful. Mic drop. No, it's too expensive.
We should probably be done, actually. I don't imagine copying that.
Hell no. All right. Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you guys for being here, in the comments, for watching. Thanks to Patreon supporters. If you want to see extra content, get behind the scenes, look at what's going on, definitely check out Patreon. It's the cheapest $5 a month, and you can cancel anytime. Why would you cancel though? It's me. Don't do that. Just kidding.
Today's
Thank
episode
you.
is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends.
No, it's not. Fuck. All right. Anyway, seriously, just kidding. Thank you to everyone who supported us now or in the past or in the future. And thank you, Cody, for your time. And we'll see you guys in the next video.
And for just $5
Thank you guys
a
for
month,
having me.
you can become a Scottish lord.
Stop. Okay, good rancher.
It is pretty arbitrary.
It is pretty arbitrary. All right, bye.
Bye, everybody.